This whole project is about a very outstanding work of our collection. It is about a work which has two sides, and it is a work that has therefore two titles, and the two titles are Revolution and Apocalyptic Landscape, painted by Ludwig Meidner in the years 1912 and 1913. This work consists of two paintings, painted on the same canvas from one side and from the other side. Both sides are equally in their quality and in their value and in their importance for the art of the Expressionism. And this is something which you wouldn't find that often in art history.
I'd say the first thing is to analyze the painting with whatever methods are possible. In this case, actually many things could be done thanks to the Bank of America's contribution. There was infrared photography done, then a high resolution scan, which is a fantastic device today to be able to, in the future, control and monitor whether any changes have taken place. In this particular case, actually, the X-ray was quite useful because the old frame that the painting had around it when it came to the collection in '61 could not be taken apart without destroying it. The X-ray actually allowed us to see how the painting was stretched.
It is also a very important work of art because it is a manifestation of German Expressionism around 1912, which is really outstanding within the context of German art around that time. There are two sides of these paintings, and on the one side you see a large so-called, by Ludwig Meidner, so-called apocalyptic landscape. It is a landscape where you see in the front, in the foreground, a man lying somehow relaxed in a landscape as a nude man, and behind him a very turbulent and also threatening landscape. I think Ludwig Meidner wanted to construct this enormous contrast between the way a nude person tries to live in nature and then confront that with the horrors of civilization, nature, and catastrophe, which you see in the background.
The whole painting was covered in cracks and small losses on both sides, on the Revolution side more than on the other side. And those cracks and loose particles needed extensive consolidation. In this case, we used a fish glue, Salyansky fish glue, which is so-called reversible, but it leaves open further intervention. The longer you work on a painting, the more it grows on you. One kind of develops a certain, like a love relationship. It's almost like a child that, when taken care of properly, it starts to blossom. And that's the feeling you get as a conservator. I personally find that. We also cleaned the entire surface, which was also difficult because of the very, very thick pastos way the paint was applied and the many cracks. You have to be especially careful not to damage anything.
It's about revolution, and it's even more complex scene in comparison to the landscape, very fragmented in little scenes and little aspects. It's a city view with a major figure, one major figure in the foreground, a fighter with a flag and wounded and with an open mouth and fighting, and beyond and behind him all little scenes of other persons fighting each other, houses burning, collapsing, again a scene of catastrophe, very real, sort of, in an urban context. And at the very bottom of the painting, you see the painter himself as a self-portrait looking out of this painting, looking to what will happen or come, so a little bit looking into the future out of this painting. A very expressionist, very heavy painting. These two sides, the landscape and then the view in the city, come together as a very, I would say, a very pessimistic view of the world, and especially the world in Germany in the time 1912, 1913, in the years before the First World War started.
Actually, the canvas was not stretched sufficiently. In fact, it wasn't stretched at all. It was like hanging like a loose piece of canvas with a heavy paint on both sides. And it was quite visible to the naked eye that at any point, anywhere, wherever it was presented, if in the depot or in our exhibition, it was constantly moving with a low frequency but a high amplitude. You could actually see it was going back and forth, maybe about 8 millimeters from back to front. We destroyed the old frame, and then we arranged for a work frame. And we attached the painting to the work frame with a small kind of self-made device that we call Spannbacken. And they allow you to stretch the painting in such a way that you hold it between two sheets of wood that are pressed together by a screw, and you can stretch the painting and then unstretch it again. It's something that you have in your hands, the feel of how much a canvas gives or can give, and how much tension you have to give it in order to be stable, but not too much, because you can also quite easily tear an old canvas if it is brittle.
The conservatives, they know the object best because they spend hours and hours with a microscope. They are watching how is the topography, how is the color looking. So if they say, we would like to know what is the kind of yellow here, what is the kind of blue there, it helps us to then actually establish the palette of the artist. What kind of pigments did he use?
Then pigments were analyzed, which I think in this case we used to verify things that we already knew, because Meidner himself, he wrote certain articles about his painting. We took small particles. Those particles are put either between two small glasses to be able to look at them under the microscope and whatever, or they're embedded in a resin, and then you can further analyze them.
out. So we're really also thinking about creating a pool of data, creating knowledge, of course disseminating the knowledge to the wider public in the exhibition which is coming, and by doing so fulfilling one of the main requirements from the Bank of America to actually create some new knowledge which can be shared with the wider public.
We had to extend the original canvas of the painting because it was too short to stretch it, and so we did a strip lining. We just let the strips that we attached to the original painting overlap maybe 1 centimeter. They're glued with beaver, which is a thermoplastic. You apply the glue and then you iron it.
With these two paintings, one covering landscapes or nature and the other covering the city and society in a city, Ludwig Meidner makes a perspective of life which you cannot escape. So if you move out of the city, or if you move out of a society in the city, you will get into the landscape, and there you have the same kind of thunderstorms and upheavals and problems you will find in the city, where a generation of revolutionaries tries to break down the society which exists there. So it's a relatively complex and overall perspective on the society in nature and in the city. So a relatively fundamental critique on our way, how we live and how we deal with society and with nature and with life in general, maybe.
We needed a new frame which presented a number of challenges, the main of which was actually developing a device to frame the painting and stretch it at the same time. The stretcher inside the frame is actually stretchable by nuts or bolts that are on threads that are attached to the stretcher. It was wished that the painting at all times can be visible from both sides at the same time, and it should be presented on either a pedestal or inside a wall where a window is cut out so that you can look at the painting on both sides.
Toll, dass wir den Rahmen entschieden haben. Sieht super aus.
Es ist eine wahnsinnig schöne Farbigkeit.
Sieht super aus. Mache ich auch schnell ein Foto. Sieht echt super aus.
Mechanical properties of the canvas in terms of its vibration were measured by a mechatronic specialist from the TU in Berlin, and she took some measurements in the beginning in its old frame and in the end after we restretched it. And she told me that the vibration of the canvas has narrowed down to a micrometer. It's a great success, and actually it's not visible to the naked eye anymore. Of course, the vibration on a painting that is presented in the middle of a room and is double-sided, there will always be a little bit of vibration due to air movement. But actually, since we were able to stretch the canvas to a point where to the maximum actually that it can hold, I think it's quite successful, because to the naked eye you don't see any vibration anymore. It has been traveling before, but because of the canvas being completely loose, basically, and not stretched at all, became too dangerous in our eyes to send it to venues. And we said we need to definitely consolidate it and find a new way of stretching it.